Rita,
Uh-huh.
did you do anything special to make sure that your computer is showing the correct colors? Because when you say some color, it's not what I see. I think my computer is off in range.
You know, I don't, that's just something that's like the downside of virtual things like this. That you're always at the mercy of your own device and what the colors are doing. I have not calibrated anything. I just rely on the color that, is coming up. And honestly, whatever I'm got here is probably not got anything to do with what you're seeing. That's completely reliant upon your own device. And I don't know what to tell you. What you might want to do perhaps is take a photo of something that you have, like a piece of your own artwork, and then compare it with the photo on your device, like on your computer screen, and then go into your settings for like the monitor, the monitor color and whatever, all those settings in there, and see if you can tweak something to get it to look closer to your actual piece, the real thing. Um,
Great suggestion.
that's the only thing I can think of to try to see try to get your monitor to show more accurate color. And it's all going to depend on what brand yours is. You might want to just Google it, put in your brand of computer or your brand of the brand and the model of your monitor, and just see, calibrating color or something. Maybe there's some kind of app that you can download that will help you do that. Um, but every device is different, and every device is probably going to have different controls and different ways of tweaking that. So that's the best advice I can give you.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Rita, do you ever use a fixative or anything like that?
I
On
rarely
top.
use I rarely use any fixative. The Like I say, knocking it like that, and once there's glass on it, nothing's going to touch it. So in that respect, it doesn't need fixative. Um, the only times I will use fixative is if, well, see, even with this underpainting technique, the reasons why I might use fixative, I don't need to here, because if I need fixative in order to say I messed something up, now on Canson paper where you can't get that wet or wipe off the pastel with a wet rag, um, on papers like that, if you just maybe brush off, or you have to blend, you have to brush off some part that you didn't like and then work over it. Workable fixative is really nice for that because it'll add more stickiness to the paper so that you can add more pastel. Um, some artists use like a fixative or workable fixative on purpose to darken certain areas because they want to darken a certain area with fixative, or to add like a splattery sort of technique on purpose. Um, I don't need to use fixative in order to change something in the painting, because with this sort of underpainting, all I have to do is take a wet rag and mop that up and then rework it again after that dries. Um, but I will use fixative when I'm doing a very, very large painting that I want to put the museum acrylic glazing on. Uh, the acrylic glass, it's not real glass, but it's plexiglass. And to kind of reduce the effect of static from the plexi, sometimes around the middle of a painting, if it's in transit or somewhere, if that middle starts to get close to the middle of the painting, it can pick up some pastel particles from the static. So in those cases, I've learned to just spray. I will spray finishing fixative very lightly throughout the middle of the painting, and usually I'll use. Lately, I've for that purpose, I've got this. Where did it go? The Spectrafix fixative. It's a casing based. It's a casing based fixative, and I got this at the last IAPS convention. You can see that a little bit closer. No. Um, but this is not. It's not much like any other fixative, and it takes a special sort of spray. Like they recommend their bottle. This is like an aerosol bottle that sprays a really fine mist out. This takes longer to dry, but it really actually does do the job. Like if you wanted to fix a pastel so that you could actually touch it and go like that and not lift up anything, this will do it. But you have to use it. You have to you have to spray it several times, like dozens of times in order to get to that point. And I found that it does darken a tiny bit. It does darken the colors just a little bit, but if you use it properly, it doesn't darken it very much. Otherwise, there's Lascaux fixative that doesn't darken it. But you know what I've noticed about the Lascaux when I was testing this stuff, the Spectrafix, and just out of curiosity, I tested the Lascaux as well, and I had to completely saturate painting with the Lascaux in order to be able to put my finger on it and not lift up much. And of course, if you saturate it, it does darken the colors. And when I use the Lascaux, like just the light spray, like they say, just use a light spray, and then I went like that, and there's pastel all over my fingers. So I'm wondering if Lascaux doesn't darken the colors because it doesn't actually do anything. I don't know, but for the purpose of keeping that static off the middle of my large paintings, I like to use the Spectrafix, and I just give it about 3 or 4 light coats, and I wait several hours in between the coats, and I just do it over generally the center of the painting, and then I'll frame it, and I'll feel a little bit more comfortable with that.
Rita, if I followed what you said, I know you put your pastels directly on the glass. The glass touches the pastel.
The small ones, yeah.
But if you use the acrylic or the plexiglass, you do not touch the pastel?
No, I don't. Well, for one, I don't use the acrylic on the small pieces because there's really no point. I use the acrylic for the weight issue. When I have a really large painting, to put regular glass on there, it's just way too heavy for me. And on anything larger than, say, a 12 by 12-ish, I'll use spacers anyway, just as a matter of habit. I like how they look, and because the larger the painting, the higher the price, I figure it's worth it to take my time to put those spacers on. So with the large paintings where I'm using the plexiglass, I'm using half-inch spacers at least. So it's holding the glass off, by this much.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But I had a bad experience one time. I don't know if you were here. Maybe it was one of my test market open studio days. So I was telling the story. I left. I can't even say accidentally. I mean, I didn't realize what would happen. But I picked up a large painting from one of the galleries that I had it at, and I left it in the back of my van, laying flat, for like 3 days in Texas in summertime. And when I took it to an art festival, I noticed that the piece of plexi had actually bowed in because it was laying flat. It had sunk down in the middle because it's plastic. Or the heat got to it. And it had started to touch the painting right in the middle of the painting. And then when I hung it up, it separated out a little bit, created that space again. But it had picked up all this pastel from the middle of the painting. I mean, it didn't really affect the painting that much, but you could see this like ghost image of this like cow muzzle right on the inside of the plexi, and it was like, oh my God. So when I got home, I undid it, and I took that out and I cleaned it up. And I was like, and I was looking at the plexi like this. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's really curved. So with a flash of insight, when I put it back together, I turned the plexi around and I put it back so that it was bowing outward instead of inward. And that solved that issue. But from then on, I'm like, okay, because normally, if you have a painting with pastel and it's got glass on it, you can just lay it flat. It's perfectly safe laying flat. It won't jostle. You don't have to worry about the pastel jostling, or if you just lay it flat on its back, but not if it has that plexi on it, because the plexi and the heat will just go. So I learned my lesson with that one. And that's when I started using the Spectrafix on it too, because I'm like, well, gosh, what if this happens to somebody else, or even when I transport it to an art festival, I have them all standing up usually, strapped in to somewhere, but I don't know. Anyway, I learned my lesson on that.